Yeah, baby. The Mac is back with another video. Hello, the initiated. My name is Marcus Junnikala, and today is another big day because it is a new Heavyocity release. And as you know, I tend to be pretty excited about those. So this one is called Damage Machina. So it does continue on the Damage lineup. They've been doing these kind of smaller Damage libraries for quite a while now. Makes you think when Damage 3 is coming out. I actually know absolutely nothing about that, but it's just a thought that keeps on knocking in the back of my head. That's going to be, if it's going to be a day ever, that's going to be a big day. But Machina today, in order. Now, I guess it's pronounced Machina. I'll be fancy and do it that way. Let's go to the website to learn a bit about what this is. So I'm pretty excited for this, at the very least at the principal level, because I still feel like there is a underserved market for strange, interesting, percussive things. Just, things or machines or blip blops, all kinds of noises and clicking and stuff like that could be used in a percussive way. Ooh, we're getting super overlit here. What's happening here? Let's try and get that back. I think there's an underserved market there, because I very commonly find myself looking or reaching out for either just interesting electronic blip blops or sounds like that. And this is another one that I'm very commonly find myself looking at or looking for. Let's turn on this clock so I can actually see what time it is, as well as get some nice visual feedback here. Yeah, I find myself looking for these kind of machine-like sounds, because I'm sure, as many of you have, every time you play with like a interesting mechanical machine, there are really, really cool, interesting sounds in there. So I'm super excited to see if they've managed to capture some of that magic and most importantly, translate it into a sort of more musical context. So, from the ticking of analog clocks to the churn of industrial gears, harness the raw, unpredictable rhythms of the mechanical world. Okay. Let's actually go in the page. I thought I was already in there, but... So, right off the bat, we can see that registered owners of Damage or Damage 2 save an additional $20. And yeah, you just got to have a serial for that registered with Heavyocity, I believe. And full price, this is $149. Introduction price, $119. And then you get that $20 off if you have Damage or Damage 2. So that will take you to $99 if my math doesn't fail me, which is entirely possible. So you do your own math. But interesting to see that it's only Damage or Damage 2. I guess that's kind of like you need a bigger flagship product to get into the discount lineup. So it's not enough to have one of those smaller Damage library releases, which I kind of get. I also understand if some people are a bit disappointed with that, but each to their own, I guess. The natural rhythm of the mechanical world. With over 700 unique sound sources, this collection provides all of the texture and grit needed to craft unique and evocative grooves and beats. All right. Look-wise, this obviously has the Damage 2 look to it, and they continue to utilize that. Nothing wrong with that, because it's a great looking interface, functional, works, really no complaints from my part. And also there's the benefit of if you're used to Damage 2 or the other products, you don't have to learn the interface over and over again. So that's also a kind of a nice bonus. In terms of videos, which you should probably go check out, preset playthrough, content overview, Machina trailer, all good stuff. Go check it out. We've got some nice pictures here. I mean, yeah, just seeing this machine here in the middle, whatever that is, I love stuff like that. It just looks so cool. It speaks to my inner technology thing, for the lack of a better word. And there definitely must be better words than that. Some pictures on that. Gears, grooves, grit. So yeah, they mentioned analog clocks, typewriters, steam engines, and more. Let's see, there are some, more info here. This is in partnership with renowned sound designer Robert, let's not butcher this. I mean, I might still butcher it. Dudzic? That's my best shot. I'm sorry, Robert. I actually do follow Robert on at least Instagram, I think. But he makes really, really, well, first of all, he's a, great sound designer, but he also makes really, really cool content around sound design. So you can actually see what he does, and they're really well filmed as well. Cinematography is on point, Robert. And he shows what he does, a bunch of different interesting tools. And then he, it could be anything. It could be a metal plate with some salt and a wooden ball on it. And then he'll do sound design with it and has the mics there. And he makes really cool content. You should go follow him if you're at all interested in sound design, because he's one of the I was going to say like he's the man, but if I say he's one of the men, that sounds very ominous and weird. So, but yeah, he's the man, one of the men. Yeah. Dudzic, is that how it's pronounced? Dudzic? I'm guessing. Is that like Polish or something close to that? I don't know. You let me know. But very nice to have him on board. He's badass in that department at the very least. So very happy to see that collaboration. 720 playable percussion sources. Ensemble designer, fully customizable, highly playable. Cool. And then loop designer, as always. Ranging from dark industrial pulses to meticulously crafted patterns. Transform the mechanical sounds into powerful rhythmic beds. Cool. Again, more stuff here. Cogs, clocks, typewriters, steam engines, antique tractors. My son is going to love this library. That dude loves tractors. Pinball machines. All of the gritty, grimy, and dirty clanking sounds create this unconventional, inspiring collection of percussion sources. Yeah, more about Robert Dudzic. That's my best shot. So he's known for his work in the trailer world, creating unique sounds for composers like this, Hans Zimmer? Maybe he's an up-and-coming. I haven't come across that name yet. Cara Taleve, Lauren Balfe, Jacob Shea. Jeez, I'm just destroying all these names. And more. Dudzic's signature gritty and intimate sound, mixed with Heavyocity's own expertise, create this truly impactful and one-of-a-kind collection. There you see his handsome face. D2 engine. There's some jokes to be made about that, but we shall skip those. But yeah, if you're used to the Damage 2 engine, that's what's in there. So good stuff. Unmatched damage. Yeah, Nobody blends the unconventional with the precision of forceful hits like Heavyocity. Probably agree with that. Ooh, that's a good picture. I like rust, except when it's on things that I own. That's not good. What's included? 9,202 samples, 725 unique percussion sources, 288 creative loops, 77 custom designed presets, 34 in Loop Designer and 43 in Ensemble Designer presets. And then 2 unique engines, which are the Ensemble Designer and the Loop Designer. And there you see a more broken down breakdown of that. Tech specs, 5.4 gigs uncompressed, 2.62 gigs on disk with NI compression. So very small footprint. Powered by Contact 6.8 engine. So you need 6.8 player or later, or full Contact. By the way, makes me dread the day I need to update my Contact, because if I want to keep making these demos, I probably need to do that at some point. But luckily, I haven't seen many actually go to Contact 8 now. Is it 8, the newest? I think so. So this is even using 6. Control integrated standalone VST, VST3, AU, AAX. Mac OS 10.14, 10.15, 11, 12, or 13 latest update. Rosetta 2 for Silicon Macs, fortunately. PC, Windows 10 or 11, latest service pack, Intel Core i5 or equivalent CPU, 2 gigs of RAM. There you go. Got some documentation there. We'll come back to that manual if we need it in this case, but hopefully not. So, in terms of going through some of the really basic stuff, what are we going to do today in this video? The agenda is to play as much of this to you as possible in terms of how it sounds like coming out of the box. So in other words, we're going to play as much of these presets as possible so that you get an idea of what this thing sounds like right out of the box. If you're looking for more technical videos, breaking down the engine, etc., this is probably not the place for that. That's not to say we don't have a look at that, but it's more sort of as interest rises as I go through this thing. So I might be tweaking some stuff and breaking down some of the technical stuff, but only sort of situationally. So if you're looking for a more technical breakdown, check out probably Heavyocity's own videos or some of the other reviewers' demos on YouTube. But my agenda is to play as much of this as possible so you get an idea of what it sounds like and what the presets are like and whether this sound is for you. In terms of what you'll be hearing today, it's only Damage Machina in action. I don't add any effects on top of it. No EQ, no compression, no reverb, no nothing. I only have a limiter on my master bus to make the level more consistent for this video for your viewing pleasure, but it's set to be as transparent as possible. This is a percussive library, so some of the high energy transient peaks are going to be louder than kind of the main body volume level of this instrument. So occasionally some of those really high energy transients might be caught or probably will be caught, but like I said, it's set to be as transparent as possible. So you should hear very minimal coloring, if any, to the sound. In terms of transparency, Heavyocity did send me this copy, so thank you to them for doing so. That being said, all opinions are my own, both in good and bad. I haven't been asked to say anything one way or the other, nor would I ever do that. As of today, I don't actually yet know if I'm being monetarily otherwise compensated for my time in checking out this library, but even if I will be, it has no bearing on what I say. As always, all opinions are my own, both in good and bad, and I'm never going to take on a library. I'm never going to check out a library if I'm being asked to say anything one way or the other, or even if I sniff that there are any expectations in terms of the output of my mouth, which is not for sale. But yeah, even if I'm being compensated, that only covers the time that it takes me to check out the library and also edit it, which is the biggest thing, because as you know, these days I also make the no-talk edits, and unfortunately AI isn't, at least with my capabilities and what I found, good enough to cut out only my yapping from between. And if you, as a viewer, want to support this channel as well, I do have a membership side on my site now. So you can, it's like my own Patreon, but it's just a lot better. So in case you're interested in that, and you want to support anything or everything that I do, then go there and consider supporting. Anything else we want to cover here? I don't think so. So I'm going to take myself to the DAW. When you open this in Contact, you have two NKIs, one for the Ensemble designer and one for the loop designer. So I've learned my lesson throughout the years in terms of how I want to check out most of the Heavyocity stuff. Is I want to actually start with the loop designers, because I think they sort of represent or present the sort of most refined productional quality. They put this content in the kind of sort of best possible sounding light, and I want to do that justice, because in loops, let's say, you also have the certain, musical ideas and abilities of the people who put them in these libraries. So I might be able to match that. I might be able to surpass that in some instances, in some places, in some ways, if I just pick up an individual, let's say, Ensemble preset there. But again, what I want to highlight with Heavyocity is that you tend to get really well thought out musical modules or musical ideas in these different loop designers. So I find this to be the best way to kind of present the content, and then after that we can look at the Ensemble stuff and play with our own tiddly widdly fingers. So in the loop designer, you have two further folders. You got straight, which means the time signature, and then you got, well, not the time. Yes. Anyway, triplets or straights should be simple enough. And in those, you got all-star combos and menus and breakouts. Let's start with the all-star combos, and we already have brooding metals here. Actually, before we do that, let's just do a really brief interface overview. In the middle, you have this big loop window, which shows the actual loop in question. I love this. This should be a standard thing in anything that uses loops like this, because it is actually super informative. And if you've been working with audio for a long time, you can actually tell quite a lot in terms of what's in there, what's actually in that waveform, in terms of kind of general frequency areas, and also rhythmically you can tell what's going on. So it's actually a pretty fast way to discern whether a loop might be working for what you're working on. So I love this. And again, you can adjust this is the loop start time control, and this is the loop size, or you can sort of exclude things, or make it smaller or make it full size. Basic controls: volume, pan, tune, speed, send. Quite simple. Here you have kind of a layout for the different loop zones there. Source. So in here you can actually see the individual loop that is being triggered in a key. Then you have the send effects page, which again, pretty self-explanatory. And then you have a master effects page. which again has that legendary big punish knob. Again, many jokes to be made about that, but we shall refrain from that. You see nice colors down here. Blue, orange, yellow, turquoise, I guess, green and dark blue, and then red. So the red stuff is like a stutter effect, which you can use. The blue plays all loops from all layers. So blue controls basically the simultaneous playing of these three other layers. And they tend to sort of... so the layout of these are not super... Well, I shouldn't say super. They're not always sort of consistent in the sense that in the sort of bigger Damage releases, like 1 and 2, these tend to be like kick, snare, cymbals, and special stuff. But here, obviously, we're dealing with a library that uses different kind of sound sources, so they might not be in that way, but probably generally you can go sort of from low, mid to high. Could be different because I haven't literally played this, which is another point we should probably touch on. This is a blind demo. I haven't actually heard anything of this yet. So you'll get my authentic response in terms of that. But yes, Blue Zone triggers, as you can see, if I press this C here, C is being played on the orange, yellow, and turquoise areas. But if I want to play individual sections here, I also can, or individual loops, I also can do that, no problem. But let's play some of these loops. I'll play the Blue Zone probably for the most part here, unless I want to sort of break it down myself somehow. But let's get going here. So this is Brooding Metals. So again, I always say this, but again, in case you haven't heard me say it before, I love this loop approach because these are it's wonderful to start with the Blue Zone at the very least. And then you hear these sort of general ideas which you either like or don't like, or work for your song or don't work. And then I can go, oh, okay, I like that clanky thing up there. And then I can go and find that, because I already know what key is playing it in the zone. So I can go and look for that. And then I can actually break the big loop down into its individual sections, and then I can build my own loop as opposed to being stuck with just a big loop. And unfortunately, there's still a lot of companies that just make one big loop, and it might sound wonderful, full, well-produced and polished, but the problem is I'm stuck with that loop. And maybe there's one thing in that loop that I would like to take out, one thing that doesn't work with my song. So if a library is only using kind of single loops that you cannot break to its sort of individual constituent parts, that's a big issue. And I think we should do better, or it will be a better experience for the user, and you probably sell more sample libraries doing that. Anyway, but yeah, I love this approach in this way. And you can also see how the utility of this expands, because obviously this is only one preset, but we have a lot more stuff in here. So we can really mix and match anything with everything in this library. So it's a wonderful thing. And also the individual loops are sort of simple enough that they are very modular to work with, because if you have super specific stuff going on there, it can be different to kind of cut and paste and put them together. So they need to sort of strike a nice balance of simplicity and modularity with interesting qualities. Now, they obviously need to sound interesting as well, but have like some kind of a sonic or musical interesting quirk in there. And I think that's probably a very difficult thing to achieve, which very typically Heavyocity strikes a really good balance in that regard, in my opinion. Let's go to the next preset, which is carbon-based. So I really already like this. This is one of the kind of continuing aspects in these smaller Damage releases, and also the bigger ones, is that out of the box they have a bit too much kind of wetness, reverb wetness to them than what I personally, generally speaking, like. Now, you can obviously turn off any of the send or the master reverb, which always helps. And don't get me wrong, it's not like it's excessive to the point of not like using it or finding it usable. It's just like personal taste, and obviously this depends on also the music that I'm working on. But and it's also hard to make broad statements because there are so many different Damage libraries, and also within those libraries you get some sounds are kind of less wet and some are more, but some of the loops do have the reverb in there, and then I need to do some tricks of the trade to try and suck it out a bit more. But again, this is very, very highly subjective, and I'm definitely on the end of like preferring drier sounds overall as just like a composer or a musician. So take it for what it's worth. For some of you, it's going to be perfect. For some of you, it's going to be too little and anything in between. But again, this sounds really spot on, for example, to my taste. Yeah, I'm really digging this one. Let me play that one again. Yeah, this is a really nice balance of upfrontness and that kind of tactile texture. Really, really nicely balanced. So apparently I like carbon-based stuff more than metals, at least in this instance. And also, yeah, I should say that unfortunately we can't play every single one of these loops because there are so many, but I'll try and do my best and play as much as possible. Okay, here we have a different layout for some reason. Let's see what that is. All right, so they're the same color because the sample pool here is coming from the same category of those high things. Really liking these. Again, these are super simple and modular. So they're going to actually cater to a lot of different contexts and needs, but they also sound, not only do they sound really, really good, but they're actually interesting. There's like a lot of motion and polish there. So these are actually very, very impressive to me. And again, I love how they are, it's, dry enough, present enough, texturally tactile enough. So really enjoying those. Echoing gears. Yeah. Again, I'm loving the balance here in terms of up front and to the back. I know we just talked about the reverb thing, but I'm getting none of that here. None of the stuff that personally kind of is too much for me. I mean, listen to this one in particular. The kick there is so nicely done. It doesn't take up much space in the mix, but it's perfectly sort of thumpy. And yeah. You get that low puffiness and then that top transient. It gets the idea across with absolute minimal, taking up minimal amount of space, which is wonderful from a mixing perspective. Yeah. These are really, really cool. And again, the spatial effects here are super, super wonderful. They're not too lush at all. Hybrid manipulations. I mean, those effects are amazing. I mean, this is really, really super good. Right down my alley in terms of combining that kind of cinematic sound with these kind of mechanical noises. So far, really impressed. Machine Labs. That door or whatever is creaking, it's probably not a door, like some kind of mechanical imaging. Superb. Tremendous example of pairing the mechanical with the electronic, at least to my taste. That is a stellar one. Could be a gate, actually, a metal gate. That's my guess. Mechanical grooves. That crunchiness of that, really good. Yeah, super solid. I'm beginning to see that. Obviously, this, if you're like me and you've been looking for something like, very specifically something like this, kind of mechanical noises paired with electronic processing, obviously this is going to be great for you. But also this, I can see how this can be super utilitarian, super useful in sort of any cinematic modern sound, especially if you do any kind of action cues of any sort. This can be very easily layered into or paired with cinematic stuff or synthy stuff, and with very little you can actually create very maximal tension. So I can see this being super useful in that context. Let's say you have like a synthy driving pulsing thing and you have maybe some strings going and it's like an action sequence or tension type of a thing, and you need something that doesn't take up a ton of space, like a kick drum and snare and drums coming in, or big orchestral stuff, but you need something percussive to kind of move the piece and create some like rhythmic motion and tension. This will absolutely be super useful in that context. Rattling cranks. So here, again, the superb sampling really comes across, because you get a lot of these kind of crackling, popping things, but they also have a lot of space, a lot of air there in between. And that's, in my rather limited experience, in my experience, very difficult to capture. So I'm super impressed how they're so kind of crispy and puffy and airy simultaneously. Very nice. Obviously here we do have some kind of a delay going on here. Is it in the sends? Yeah, very delayed type of a sound, but still that won't save a bad sample, so shouldn't be distracted by that. Subterranean pulsations. Again, beautiful balance of wetness and that crispiness, and still having air. It's not like completely choked out. It's actually not at all choked out. Yep. Thuds and rattles. Again, that's so well put together. Very well mixed. Really well produced. How cool is that? I mean, again, it's simple enough that it bends to a lot of different things, but it's still done so well that it's actually on its own even an evocative musical idea. I love anything with that sort of like a wooden, don't know how to describe that. It's like a wooden creak, like a creaking noise. Yeah, very, very cool stuff. Now, how do we want to do this going forward? Okay, so in menus and breakouts, they very nicely have these sort of different ways of categorizing these sounds. So organic, hybrid, and experimental. I actually really like this. I don't always completely agree with the terms necessarily, but again, there's no way to make that perfect for everybody. But yeah, just a really nice additional way of categorizing stuff, because you can find what you're looking for potentially easier that way, instead of going with these descriptions that are even more subjective than organic or hybrid or experimental. But let's just, this content is obviously similar, because I'm guessing the All-Stars pull from these, but we'll just touch on it briefly. So some of the organic stuff here. Sounds like a mechanical tiger or something. Yeah, cool. So organic, as a description, seems to hold water there for me. So that's really cool. Let's do hybrid. That imaging on that, I can't do that with my mouth. That's what he said, but so these sound a bit more organic to me than I expected, but hey, again, I'm not complaining. They are definitely more sort of processed in that way. Experimental. Yeah, I love weird stuff like this. You can hear that these kind of, to my taste at least, the gathered loops get a bit too rich. So I'd probably want to use individual components myself, but hey, that's up to you. Again, loving utility options as well. So again, you can take utility mid, and these should be, content from the mid-range or that are focused on the mid-range. I find that with damage, at least damage 1 and 2, sometimes in the mid folders or categories, you can find kind of a lot of stuff that also works really well as kick. So it doesn't necessarily mean that there are only sort of snare type hits in there, but rather that the frequency content is focused in a certain area. But so I'm just saying that so you don't miss out on some of the content, because sometimes you might find like a good kind of a low end kick type of a situation in the mid folder as well. But again, yellow here, this is kind of the mid sample pool that it's pulling from, and in blue we have something that plays a sample from each 3 octaves here. Yeah, so as you can hear, sort of mid-centered, we did have a bunch of low info, for example, there. So don't overlook it when you're working with the utility folders. But yeah, then low loops, same thing. Yeah, so the general point here, utility presets or folders or whatever you would call those, super useful. I would probably myself maybe even work starting with those, especially if I know what I'm sort of roughly after. But again, a library of this size, if you work with this on a project for a good amount, you'll really wrap your head around the size of this pretty well, I would imagine, because it's not too big. It's not overwhelming size. And so far, at least, I'm getting a very good vibe or impression of the size here, because I can wrap my head around the stuff that I've heard so far, but it's still like conceptually, and I can map roughly stuff in my head, but it doesn't sound small. Like it sounds like, I'm sort of kind of scraping the surface here. So it seems super comprehensive, but I can wrap my head around the library's structure and its sort of design. And for me, that's personally pretty important, so that I find it more pleasurable to work with a library. Because if it's massively big and I cannot sort of wrap my head around in terms of navigating it and finding stuff, it can be more difficult to get into it and actually use it. So I do actually personally like when developers take that into consideration. Again, could be something that they did or did not here take into consideration, but I would guess they did, but you would have to ask them. So again, all of this content that we've looked at so far is also available in triplet form. Now, unfortunately, due to time constraints, we can't check out all of it, but we'll do a few all-stars here. But again, you can see that in utility, we've got mid, low, high, and full, and again, experimental, hybrid, and organic. So another way to approach this content here. Interestingly enough, these are named exactly the same as the straight all-stars. that's actually kind of interesting. And that's actually intuitively, I would say this is better this way. I don't know if it's the exact same content, but just kind of transcribed into the triplet format. I would guess these patterns are actually different otherwise, instead of just being switched into the triplet format. But this actually makes it easier, at least for me, to, again, wrap my head around what is in here and what stuff sounds like. So I actually like this categorization. But I'll play a few things here from Carbon-based. So yeah, I don't actually, we could test this actually. So let's go to Carbon-based straight. Let's actually try and hit one note. Cool, and then go into triplets. Yeah, so the content is different, or at least it's not mapped on the same keys. And by content, I just mean like it's the same musical idea, but changed into the triplet format. So, but it doesn't seem to be that way, at least based on that single key that we played. But they never are, at least to my memory, with Damage releases. So I don't see why it would be any different here. And it would actually probably be harder to kind of transmutate them into triplet things. Yeah, I mean, I love myself some triplet stuff. So it's wonderful that they are in here, because some libraries only offer you the straight option, and that's wonderful because probably most music is in that format. But when you need that triplet, it's so nice to have them in here. And actually, my experience with Damage triplet stuff has been like, I remember having so much fun finding so many interesting and useful loops, and then, you know, building stuff with them. So actually, and so, yeah, I mean, the ideas are just super, super solid. So my experience with the triplets has been kind of exceptionally fantastic. Cool. I think that is the loop designer. So let us go into the ensemble designer and see what's up in here. So I'm just gonna have a peek, take a peek in OBS. Things look to be appearing correctly. So this is where you get into the sort of more playable aspect of this thing. In here you got 5 folders: All Stars, Found Sounds and Timekeepers, Pinball Machines, Mechanical Sounds, Impacts and Transitions. So again, very cool, because if you have something specific that you're looking for, this structuring helps you locate that stuff better. Let's just start playing this one that they sort of default have open up here, because there's probably a reason for that. This is Monster Typewriter, and I'm just going to get my bearings here as I get my hands on this. Okay, so this appears to be louder. So I'm going to adjust this limiter a bit here. Again, we are dealing with very percussive sounds, so they're going to have high energy transients. And if I keep this too low, it's actually not going to be super pleasurable for you to listen. But again, I'm gonna listen to, like, if I hear any audible crushing, I'm obviously not going to take us there. So Okay, so it seems like the black keys are introducing like a rhythm pattern here. And the white keys, yeah, they do the single note. So that's really useful. So one thing that I'm immediately myself missing here is the option to have a doubling key. So something like an extra key here that repeats the note that you just played. So if I play this one, or that one, this one, instead of doing this, I could do this and have it repeat. And that way I can play a lot faster than what my keyboard actually releases. Because this is a heavy-weighted keyboard, so if I play fast, it's not going to return fast enough if I want to do stuff like that. So I gotta play it in with something else. And then I got to move the MIDI in the editor. There are other ways to do that as well. But anyway, so I think that would be useful for those who want to play things in there. Again, another thing is that due to the nature of this library, this is not like we're sampling a snare where it's really important to get the kind of full spectrum of the dynamics and the textures of the snare. But here they are sampling, for example, this typewriter here. And when you're getting this sample, you can probably sample that maybe, I don't know specifically what part of the typewriter it is. You can maybe sample that at different sort of volume levels. And, you know, if you hit it differently, you're certainly going to get a different texture as well. But these are not like playing these in a sort of a typical percussive drum sense is probably gonna be more difficult and harder to yield results that sort of sound natural. So you're probably gonna combine these things into some kind of a pattern that, you know, makes more sense and sounds musical. So again, I'm just throwing shit at the wall literally here. But again, this is what I mean, like when you're building patterns with these. Again, I would need to sort of dig deeper into this to get to know the sounds properly and do the right pairings. And in the Loop Designer, a lot of that work has already been done. Obviously, it's done in a certain way. And if it doesn't cater to your needs, then you got to do it yourself. And again, nothing wrong with doing this, but it is a different approach and certainly takes more time. But yeah, you really got to get to know this in order to utilize it to its full extent. Let's try a few of these in here. Cavernous. Okay, so a bunch of stuff there being thrown through some reverb there, as you can see. So this is nice that it's not only, the presets are not only selections of different instruments or rather sound sources that pair together well, but they're actually might have these kind of stylistic processing done on them as well. Derelict Junkyard. That's what I call my trousers. Yeah, so again, here you can hear a filtered sound into a reverb. So these can be really useful if you're looking for a certain sound for your piece. They can be actually very inspiring that way as well. Dungeon Crawl. How can I not do a preset called that? Yeah. Cool. Geared up. That's loud. Oh, that's actually really rare to have like a low frequency focused sound that has so much separation, like transient impact at that sort of its top end, but then have that kind of a separation that's very visceral to feel. Yeah, that's good. That's great. Yeah, these are super useful when you're building up all kinds of different things. Even for like sound designers, I would sort of expect this to be sort of more musically geared, but this is showing me that also for sound design, which makes complete sense that it works really well, but I'm trying to find a kind of like a hi-hat sound here. But yeah, cool sounds regardless of my failure to find a hi-hat-ish sound. Steaming rhythms. Ooh. Cool. That's almost like SNES type of stuff there. Suspended timekeeper. Cool. And let's do one more from All Stars. Warehouse Junkets. I love that resonance there. I love that it's in there. All right, cool. Let's do a few from these individual folders, although the All-Stars undoubtedly use stuff pulled from these. Found sounds and timekeepers. Let's do found max ensemble. Yeah, I mean, these would bend into so many different genres. The creativity is pure limitation here, but you can use these for so many different things. Metal, text, and paper scrapes. Right. Pinball machines. Let's do flippers and percussion. Yeah, these really nicely have that wooden resonance that the pinball machines would have. Well, I guess that could be metal as well. Really nice. And again, I love that they included those weird resonances there, because that would be stuff that a lot of people try to cut out, which I don't think sonically ends up working. It ends up sounding too choked. You just re-record or try and get the sound without it. I love those resonances. So again, kind of being the sort of one-shot type of a thing, it's in terms of how you turn that into like a musical context, that's again completely up to you and what you're doing, creatively speaking. But again, that's why the loops can be so useful, because they kind of do a lot of the work there already for you. And again, they are simple and modular enough that you don't, have to be stuck with something you don't want to have here. But it's wonderful to have the option here if you want to start building stuff yourself. Booming wooden machine. These have a wonderful kind of wet sounding aspect to them, like almost like in a laboratory somehow. Not that I like the place in otherwise, but very interesting sound. Cool. Clanking, cranking machines. Nice. Steam engines, very interested in this one. Again, these are so like weird and sonically interesting that really, in terms of like creatively, what can you do with these is really just up to your creativity. I mean, pretty much like whatever genre, obviously comes down to, taste and what you want to use if you want to use these kind of things. But yeah, I can see these going anywhere. Yeah. Last one, impacts and transitions. Yeah, I love these. These are really, really good. Again, they'll be limited by what it says in the box. I mean, I could use these as components in a beat easily. But yeah, sure, impacts and transitions as well. But yeah, those sound really, really good. Yeah, this is actually looking to be one of my favorite folders here. Really good stuff. These just really interesting sounds. And again, you could easily break these down into components or use them as components to a weird cinematic drum kit easily. Let's do small gears and odd mechs. Again, that's such a weird sound, brilliantly captured. That could almost sounds like animalistic in a way. Yeah, like a beast growling. Yeah, these are some of my favorites here. One of the things that I'm sort of thinking is that I wish some of these were, in a sense, longer, but they're in the Ensemble designer anyway, and that's kind of what I'm thinking or wishing for is already in the Loop designer. So maybe that's kind of a moot point here. Cool. Well, let's wrap this one up. Overall, I think this might be actually one of my favorite kind of smaller Damage releases. This really hits a lot of those kind of points that I've been looking for. First of all, I love the sound sources, that kind of stuff. I've always, as a little kid, when you find a machine, you play with it. I've always been fascinated by not only the look of them, but the sounds of them are just so pleasing and fulfilling. So I am biased in that way because I like the sound sources, period. Obviously, if they were horribly captured and processed, I wouldn't like this, but that's obviously not the case here. So let's actually open the loop designer here. So again, for me, this strikes a very particular, or kind of ticks a very particular box for me, because I've wanted and wished for Heavyocity to do this. The last library that kind of did that very specifically for me was the kind of the electronic sound sources, which is what I hoped what they would do. And this was the other one. So I don't know if Heavyocity read my diary or something like that, or if I have like a Neuralink in there and they haven't told me about it. But yeah, really, really liking this. Obviously, source samples are absolutely fantastic. Again, I love that in the loop designer, the ideas are simple enough and modular enough that you can actually use them as excellent components in building your own rhythm. You're not stuck to a big one loop that you can't change in any way. First of all, you can break it down into individual constituent components, and then further you can tweak it with making it smaller or just using parts of it. You can obviously tune it, etc. But again, I love this method of working with rhythm components with Heavyocity libraries because they are so flexible. And also the ideas, although they are simple enough and modular enough, they are not only super well captured and processed so that they sound interesting, but the musical ideas underneath are also super interesting and evocative. It's even if they're doing simple things, there are tiny nuances and details there that make it sort of very interesting and mature. So when you're listening to it, it sounds very polished and keeps the mind listening, which you should definitely leverage because doing kind of modular compositional ideas at that level, doing productional work at that level, or doing things to that sort of production quality is super difficult. And also, mixing. So that's why I do encourage people to actually use these, because you get a better sound than what a lot of people can produce on their own, again. And they're modular enough so you can actually create your own musical ideas instead of being stuck with a loop that you didn't, do much about. So that's very, very nice. And also I do like the size of this because, like I said, this is kind of easy to wrap your head around, but it's not too small and it's not too overwhelming. And even if, like, with this very sort of superficial look that we did, I don't get the idea that, I know exactly everything that this library has to offer. I still got the impression that there's just a lot more content in there, and it will work in a variety of ways and be diverse and multifunctional and utilitarian. But I can wrap my head around what this library is about and how to navigate it. Yet we didn't bump, or at least I didn't bump into this feeling that we sort of came to the end of the content by any means. So this, size-wise, especially in relation to the pricing, this seems very well optimized in my experience. Layout-wise, again, I love that we have utility folders for low, high, and mids. And also I like these more descriptive foldering here. So that's a really big plus as well. In terms of the Ensemble designer, I like that many of these presets have their sort of own stylistic approach. So they can be, not only do they cater to like specific needs that you might have for your soundtrack, but they can also be putting you in a different inspirational position, which can then spark creativity in your work. The individual source samples are really, really well done. Again, we're not dealing with like a sampled snare or a sampled percussive kind of made instrument in that sense. So these are, if it's a typewriter, sampling volume and textural differences and changes can be difficult. So many of these sort of come across in a sort of a more one-shot sense. But in this context, for these kind of sound sources, that's not really an issue, because at least in most cases, you wouldn't be playing them in a sort of a high dynamic range type of a thing. Although I will say that they have done a pretty good job of that here in terms of the intuitiveness of playing them and how it maps to perceived dynamics. But yeah, fantastic sound sources. My favorites were the impacts and transitions here, just like stellar sampling, stellar recording. Source sounds are super interesting, like clanky, cranky, very texturally rich things. I can definitely use these to even create components for sort of weird percussive kits. So those were really, really nice. Obviously, we just kind of scraped the surface here. And really the magic here is in pairing the sounds that speak the most to you. So I'm going to find something, let's say, if I am to create like a kit type of a sound here, I would get like a kick from the impacts and go to the pinball machines and get kind of like a snare type of thing. And then I would get something higher from somewhere else and then add bits and bobs in between. So this is really kind of like a really super rich playground in terms of creating your own weird, and when I say weird, I don't mean just like for obscure, strange sounds, but your own weird in the sense like it's unorthodox and can be obviously more difficult for the listener to, pinpoint like, what is this sound? And that can be, again, super interesting depending on what you're doing. So you can definitely spend a lot of time with this and build your own kits. And I think that's where the magic of the Ensemble Designer is in here, because then you can go and customize everything that you want. But you definitely need to, I would say, play around with a lot of these samples and find your favorites and mark them down and put them together into a kit. And that's where this really, really shines. And I will say that I obviously have like a very specific interest in using these kind of more noticeably and directly in some of the stuff that I'm working on. Like I want those machine-like sounds to come through. But I also see this as a very utilitarian library, in the sense that if we, in the Loop Designer, for example, go to the high loops, like I said earlier, you can use these as, let's say you have like an action sequence or an action cue, or you just want to add like a small rhythmic element, but you don't want it to be like a drum kit or cinematically, like noticeable cinematic percussion things. You can add this in there and it creates that organic tone, but you get a sense of like rhythm and progression. You can use a loop. That's obviously a bit something like that. But you get the idea. You get like that organicness, but not a sound that you can identify. Okay, that's a snare or that's a hi-hat or something like that. So this is a nice thing that's sort of in between the two worlds, because it's kind of machine-like and organic. And obviously some of these sounds are processed by Heavyocity through different effects and other stuff. But my point is, even if you're not like really looking for, I want like those machine sounding sounds, this can still be something that you won't identify as a machine clanky, clinky type of sound per se, but something sort of in between the organic and the hybrid world, if you will. So I think this is actually super utilitarian in that regard as well. And I will also say that some of the more processed sounds here, where they blend some of those electronic components, were actually really, really down my alley. Like some of those, I don't remember which one it was here, but the more sort of processed electronic end of this actually sounds really, really good, and would be something that I wouldn't necessarily identify as being kind of mechanical sourced at all. And I would just think, oh, that's really cool electronic sounds. So also that's worth considering, because although it's not, most of the content here isn't like that, but the more processed end, I think Machine Labs or hybrid manipulations there, they have like super interesting, mostly electronic sounding things in there. Cool. So yeah, I mean, one of my favorite, apparently Damage Pack they're called there, but yeah, smaller Damage libraries. Cool. I think that's it for this video. This has already been out for a few days now, so I'm sure many of you have this at home or at your studio, so let me know what you think. And certainly, as always, let me know what you think of this video. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Finished.